Huh. So my camera decided to be weird. Welcome everybody to another Microsoft Unboxed pod. I am your host today, Kareem and David, and I'm joined by.
David Allen, and hopefully we're all in focus by the time we get started here. I see my buddy over there sizing himself up, making sure he looks good. You look
I'll
good,
just
buddy.
I'll just move my chair. I don't know, literally like 30 seconds ago, I was doing just fine, and now my camera's like, hey, screw you, man. Anyway, uh, we are here to talk about obviously Microsoft news. We had last week off to celebrate the Easter holiday for those of you who do that, or just wanted to take a week off from news in general. We want to welcome you guys back. We will be talking quite a bit about stuff. We have on the docket um, the Switch 2 and how tariffs are affecting that or not affecting that. We'll let you know about that later. We will also be talking about uh, Microsoft's Copilot is now going to be in the browser in a different way. I think we talked 2 weeks ago about how they're adding some features to the browser for testing and giving it to other people. Now we're going to be talking about it's taking over search, creating its own homepage, and some other features that'll be coming to it, like create notebooks and new AI agents that were discussed during the week. So we have a nice chunk of section for Copilot, which is becoming a growing theme for this podcast. We'll also be talking about Microsoft leveling up its Xbox mobile app. They've added some things and how that can translate to its desire to be in the handheld space, which I think we all kind of want them to be as fans of Xbox. We're also talking about the DOJ versus Google. They are in court currently for another antitrust issue, but we're not going to go over that because this is just early days for that. We are going to talk about the remedies phase, which just kicked off. So this is the ending of another one that was actually found Google guilty of anti-competitiveness, and now they're going to say, hey, maybe we rip Chrome out of the Google's lively hands right now, and see what we can do with that in order to fix the way that they've kind of taken over the market in search. We're talking about Doom: The Dark Ages. Looks like they're going to try and have a big launch for that. Offer some exclusive accessories or whatnot. Lenovo just rolled out a lot of its ThinkPad lineup for those of you who are ThinkPad fans. Maybe you're a little more business oriented than the yoga fans out there. So here's something exciting for you guys to talk about. We'll also be talking about Microsoft 365 Copilot agents. Like I said, that's kind of one of the big things that's been going on this week is the introduction of agents. And a couple new features as well. And then we'll briefly end with some tech earnings, early stuff. Seems like the market's okay for some early entrances or announcements from Intel and Google. We also have our, a section that we kind of want to spare, which will be talking about a little bit of gaming, what's, on the Xbox free play days, as well as, my favorite co-host here just got his hands on a handheld.
Yes.
Talking about our experiences and, once again, where we see that going. So with that being said, do you want to walk our fans and listeners into our first story?
Yep. Let's see, what do we have here?
We got tariffs and the Nintendo
Yep,
Switch.
that's right. We got to go ahead and get those tariffs out of the way, folks. I know people are, like myself, are entirely tired of hearing about tariffs, but let's talk about them one more time. There's some,
at least in the context of gaming, it's a little bit fun.
yeah,
maybe.
it's been fun, and there's some good news here. Nintendo has said that the pre-orders for the Nintendo Switch 2, they started yesterday, and I sent my buddy here a picture yesterday. It was interesting to see. People kind of took me back to the old days of people being lined up outside the store waiting to make sure they were first in line to get that pre-order, because yesterday afternoon I was seeing reports that Best Buy, Walmart, GameStop were already out of pre-orders. So the rush is on to see if you can get one in your hand. Kind of reminded me of the Nintendo Wii days. Some of us, myself included, waited a year for that Nintendo Wii. But let's give you some good news. Nintendo has said that the tariffs will not impact the cost of the console, or handheld, I should say. It will be $499 for the handheld. Nope. I got that wrong. I've got that wrong. It is $449 for just that.
This guy's adding his own tariff tax on there.
Yep, I was adding on there. It is $499 for the Mario Kart World bundle. My bad there, folks.
And that actually saves you about $50, I think, right?
Yeah, it
that
does.
game's like $100 or something.
That was something I was noticing and something I wanted to ask you about, because Nintendo was very clear in saying that, yes, the handheld was not impacted, but the games and the accessories were. And just kind of going down what they gave here: Mario Kart World, $79.99; Donkey Kong Bonanza, $69.99; a Nintendo Switch 2 Pro controller is, let's make sure I get, $84.99; the Joy-Con pair, $94.99. And I'm not going to sit here and go through all of these, but it just seems like, I get it. It's tariff time. It just seems like some of these games and some of these accessories are really expensive this time around. And I'm not sure how gamers are going to take that. We've kind of been through the $49.99 back in the day. A game was $50. Okay, they pushed us to $59. Now we're seeing in the Xbox world and the PlayStation world $69. Well, here's one for $79. So is that where we're headed? Are gamers gonna buy into this, price increase?
I mean, I think pre-orders are going off the charts for this device. So I think there is at least an initial faction of people who have already bought into it, who are already game for this new console. They might be bored of their current one. Remember, folks, this thing is 9 years old. The Switch One. So there are some people, while the Xbox and the PlayStation feel relatively new, this thing is feeling relatively old for some people. So they're ready to upgrade. I'm not going to belabor the point. It's nice that the tariffs aren't affecting this initial batch of consoles. Again, who knows how many they have already designed, pre-ordered, and started shipping through, or have shipping agreements through current channels. Maybe they ship through, if you're going to North America, they ship to Canada, hold them there, and figure out a way to get them down to the U.S. Relatively inexpensive, or maybe they take a hit just to make sure that they get it on the back end for these games. If you have a $10 to $40 increase on games, and that's multiplied by millions, maybe you make your money back that way. I don't know how this is all going to work out over the long term. Now, here in the U.S., we haven't experienced the hit of tariffs just yet. That will happen probably next month, as again, supply chains take 6 to 8 weeks to actually get affected by any announcements. So, like I said, this is the initial batch. Who knows in June or July or going back to school if the prices stay the same once these things have been in place for a while. So if you are thinking about getting the Switch, I'd say get it now, get it as soon as you can, pre-order whatever you can do. Because like I said, who knows what the price will be by the end of summer. We're going to move on to the next topic, just because, again, we want to save some time to talk about handhelds. We got Microsoft Edge is getting leveled up with Copilot vision and AI. I believe this is kind of a headline actually towards the end of last week, but since we missed last week, we want to make sure that you were at least up on the conversation about this in case you had friends or family who wanted to talk about it. What this basically is that Microsoft Edge now offers Copilot Vision for free to all users in the US. Sorry for our international listeners. By removing the paywall and giving it broader accessibility. This thing used to be a feature only for Microsoft 365 plans, but now if you live in the US, you can get it in the Edge browser. Copilot Vision enhances browsing by seeing what's on your screen and providing insights, summaries, and context-appropriate responses. This is really a voice-initiated voice interaction with this thing. Now, you can get text-based things if you say you're a person who doesn't like to speak out loud, or you're in an office where you can't. You can get a lot of that. What it does is it supports 9 websites currently, including Wikipedia, Amazon, and Wayfair, for these more extended experiences of things that it can do. But you can basically go to most websites and click the little button at the bottom, and you'll see that there'll be 3 new icons that show up, which is a speaker, glasses, and a settings menu. The settings menu is basically to kind of let the AI know what it is that it can and can't see, what kind of voice you'd like to have it speak back to you in. It's privacy focused design, which again, it's activating only with users' consent, with no data logging or storage stored in any session. So, again, like I said, it's a voice activated thing initially, so it won't store any of your voice conversations, your voice, stored in the cloud or anything like that if you didn't want it. It aims to differentiate Edge from competitors like Chrome or Safari by offering a unique AI driven experience. Again, while there are insights that have been added to both OpenAI and Google and in Copilot as well, where they kind of give you expanded information. This is mostly a voice interaction. I tried it the other day. It's pretty cool. You can continue to talk about things in a more naturalized language. So you can, if you were talking about, hey, what else has this actress been in? What's the net worth? What are the upcoming movies that this person plans to be in? What is their most well-known role? Have they been up for any awards? All of that can be asked at different levels or different parts of the prompt that you're in. I'll let you speak on it if you have any thoughts about this.
I think this is pretty cool. I mean, I think we briefly mentioned that this was coming a few weeks ago, and my thought is, we've talked about it. Microsoft has got to make money here. They're looking ways to make money. They're looking ways to, make this spark into something to maybe later get you to subscribe to a Copilot subscription. But, the thing to me is we're getting people to take their fingers off the keyboard in a way that we're asking Copilot what it sees. Give me information about what's on my screen. So we have subtly changed the fact that we're not typing to Copilot anymore directly, as in asking it a question like, what's the capital of Minnesota, or give me the demographic of the capital of Minnesota, for example. We're not typing that into Copilot. We're asking it what's on the screen and being able to interact with it. And I agree with you. In tinkering with this, I have enjoyed it. But that's the reason I wanted to mention it. It also feels different. It's not traditional. So we kind of go back to that thing that I have mentioned for several weeks now. We're starting to see different ways of interacting with information and different ways of interacting with our devices and getting responses based on that. So keep going, Copilot. I want to see where this leads.
Yeah, my only reserve right now is that we're waiting to see how they incorporate this on mobile because they don't own Android
Yeah.
as an operating system or iOS, so they can't do this over the broad spectrum of the OS or integrating linked apps or whatnot. So they can't be like, hey, what's on my screen if it's an app outside of Edge. So once if and when they do bring it to Edge, it'll be interesting because again, it's to your point, it's becoming task oriented. So it's not like a nebulous, like, hey, this thing just pops up and I can ask it anything. And now because of, the paradox of choice, I don't know what to ask it. This thing is, hey, I'm searching, I'm engaging in my browser, whatever you do with your browser, search, research, planning, whatever, you at least know that's task oriented with this new chat agent. And once you're out of Edge, you can go back to living the rest of your life and it's not floating nebulously somewhere else on your phone. So at least they have that going for it. We're going to talk about the next thing, which is speaking of Copilot, Microsoft Edge is getting a new tabbed home experience. And they're testing it out right now. But for those of you who use Edge on mobile or on the desktop, you may have it customized in 3 different ways. I believe that's what they offer, right? It's like the conversational information or something else where it's just basically a a blank Bing image in the background. But when they say more information, that's the one that has like the MSN news up there with a few links or whatnot, and then your bookmarks at the top. And then, like I said, the less conversational one is they basically move it down. They split the difference. They have half of it down, and so you have this big, beautiful Bing wallpaper image. And then if you scroll up, you'll see the rest of your news or whatever, the news feed that you can customize yourself. They're testing getting rid of that and not getting rid of it, but at least supplementing it with a big version of Copilot, essentially. For those of you who played around with Copilot, it's the navy blue background with the just the text prompt at the bottom that says, hey, what would you like to start searching for, or text prompting. So you can start getting that as your homepage. What are your thoughts on them moving it from the dedicated app on the website, on your desktop, having it in the sidebar as well, to now having it on as a homepage to just start off like your, whatever it is you're going to start searching for?
I don't know. I have two mixed feelings on this. I think of the Google Chrome homepage. The Chrome homepage has always dropped you to Google, and then it's had the 6 or 8 icons down there of sites that it says you visit regularly to kind of get you started. I used to be a big homepage fan back in the day. I would customize my MSN, and I would, thought I was cool. I had my weather over here, my local news, my world news.
For those of you
like,
who are
like
watching,
you're showing there.
Yeah, for those of you listening, you're showing mine. Mine's politically driven and gaming and whatnot, but this is what it would replace, and I actually prefer this. But keep going. Sorry about that.
And I agree with you. I prefer that page, but as I've gotten older, I find myself when I open my browser, I know where I'm going. I just start typing into where I'm going. I've kind of got a starting point. I've kind of got a purpose. So I understand that Microsoft has moved Copilot to the homepage, and it's going to take up a good portion of the homepage. And it is a good way to get people to think about interacting with it if they don't know where they're going. But I think a lot of people, when they open their browser, you're on a mission. You know where you're going. You know why you open it. I don't know how many people are going to stop and ask Copilot a question there. I think the question comes after their purpose, if that makes sense. Like they open their browser, I need a cooking recipe for a banana pudding. Okay, maybe they type that there. But a lot of us, we're going to the stocks, we're going to the news, or in our case, we're going to tech news. We're on that mission. I get it. I like it, but I'm not sure how effective it's going to be.
We also have to make sure that we view these things as dual function. The first function is desktop, which again, for desktop, we are doing things slightly different than we do on mobile. On mobile, this might be great because again, you have the captured audience. Their screen is only 6 to 7 inches, and they can only display one thing at a time. And if the idea is to get them to engage with it, they're forced to kind of get into Copilot immediately. If you're on desktop and you're looking at what we're sharing on the screen currently, you basically have 2 ways to get into Copilot. And this is what Microsoft always does. They give you 2 new ways to do the exact same thing, and it gets convoluted. I think what they should do on desktop is emphasize the Copilot icon, which becomes that side panel, with an animation when you open it, so that you could split the difference. Hey, if you are task oriented, like I'm going into the browser to do this thing, and you could also use Copilot as well versus being forced to use Copilot. So if they say, hey, you open up a new browser and there's an animation, say, hey, Copilot's still up here in the corner if you want to also look at something or supplement whatever you're going to search for. So if you're saying, I got to go to Amazon real quick and either look up something I need to buy or check out where my shipping is at, stuff like that. You go to Amazon, immediately start typing in Amazon. The little animation at the top says, hey, I can read, because Copilot can read what's on the page next to it, and be like, hey, you're looking for Amazon, you're looking for that product. Guess what? I have the shipping and tracking date as well. You click on me, you get all that information in the side pane, and with keeping it there in the side pane, you can move on to the next thing you're going to search for in your browser while still having that information available to you versus, having it dedicated. So, and my question to you, I think we're talking about off mic before we jump to the next topic, is do you get the Copilot response, or do you get jumped into the Bing response? And I know people are going to laugh like, oh, Bing sucks or whatever, but it does offer you a variety of information that goes from Wikipedia to everyone's social media links if you're looking for people or places, Yelp reviews, news that's related to the topic, images. Bing is very good with images. You don't get that with Copilot. So how does that work?
Yeah, you're exactly right. Copilot, love it, use it, pound it every day. But it's very cut and dry. It answers your question. There's no context. And to your point, when I'm searching, sometimes I like the context. Sometimes I need the context. Sometimes I don't know exactly what I'm searching, but I'll see a picture that is contextual that will, okay, yeah, that's what I was looking for. Or if I'm looking something and I get an image, with it, hey, there's those images in the search results. There's that extra piece of information. I'm torn. I am. I think most people are like you and I. They need that interactive response. But I still think there's certain times where a question and a cut and dry answer is okay. But I think that's also going to be a downfall of AI in general. I think AI's got to get to the point where it will give you the contextual or at least ask you, do you want it? Because I started an editorial this week that I haven't finished, and I'm gonna make this comment, and I'll stop here. Look at your look at your screenshot there. What does it remind you of? It reminds me of an MS DOS prompt. That is exactly what it reminds me of. The old MS DOS prompt, and that was how I got into my first computer, my first Windows PC. It was a custom built PC, booted it up Christmas morning, sitting there at that DOS prompt. No manuals, no books. What do I do now? What do I do now?
So you're
You
saying
get
you're
up,
saying you want a little gooey, huh? A little gooey in
yeah,
your sauce.
exactly, because you didn't know to type WIN and hit enter to get your GUI unless you had a manual there to tell you. And I didn't have a manual there to tell me. And this was my first custom built PC. It wasn't a Packard Bell or, that when you booted it, it automatically puts you in Windows. So I feel like some people are going to look at this prompt and they need some direction.
Yeah, I cannot disagree with you on that. Moving on to the last bit of Copilot information we got, at least for this week's round of Copilot news, is that we got a lot of updates for the people who are holding a Microsoft 365 account. Those of you who are paying for it, you're getting uh, the latest Copilot upgrades, which include notebooks, AI agents, and a new feature called Copilot Create. Um, like I said, let me sure to get my details right for you guys. Let me sure we're talking about this with all the relevant information. Obviously, this is driven on AI productivity because that's where Microsoft sees it's going to make its money. You get a new agent store. I think what was it, about 6 months ago? Microsoft talked about introducing agents. They were kind of lambasted by Salesforce, which also kind of led the charge in AI agents saying, "Hey, you're copying us." And Microsoft said, "Yes, we are. We're bigger than you, so deal with it." Well, they are now centralizing a hub for discovering and using AI agents to tailor tasks, like if you're looking for research, reasoning, project management, and analysis, you can go to there and find AI agents that are dedicated to each one of those. And I think we're going to be pulling some of those from GitHub as well. So if you're in GitHub and you want to make a quick buck, you can put yours in the store, I believe. Researchers is another reasoning agent that you can find there, just made by Microsoft, which handles complex multi-step research with high accuracy, at least it's according to Microsoft, and analysis, or analyst, I guess, which is helps process raw data into actionable insights quickly. This would be great for anybody who ties any other stuff into Power BI if you need to do visualizations for reports or PDFs or any kind of presentation that you got to do later. Analyst is going to be your next greatest partner. They'll also be featuring third-party AI assistants from partners like Jira, Monday, and Miro, which will have their own custom-built agents. So for those of you who are doing collaborative task projects or scheduling each day, each week for different things, it'd be great to have these AI agents in there to organize all of that and kind of present, meeting notes or shared documents and time stamp all that stuff for you guys. The new Create feature that'll be introduced for Copilot integrates OpenAI's ChatGPT 4.0, which is, I believe, the latest AI language model that OpenAI released about 3 weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken. And again, this version of 4.0 was mainly about image creativity. It seems like I don't know how much more the language models have learned, but it's great for content creation, enabling brand image modifications with company guidelines that you can put in there. Again, this was, I think I said, it was about 3 weeks ago where OpenAI was like, hey, if you want to stop using, Leonardo AI or Midjourney or anything like that, you can start using this one. It's good. It's not to the level of Midjourney just yet, but it is pretty decent for a text to image prompt platform. The AI generated visuals can also be used for presentations, obviously. So if you're going to be tying this stuff, like I said, into Power BI or just PowerPoint in general, you can make dynamic videos as well, because Chat GPT 4.0 does do some animations and videos. The next thing you'll be getting with this upgrade is Copilot notebooks. This is one I was kind of interested in particular. It's a collaborative AI workspace for organizing notes, documents, websites, and more with real-time updates and podcast-style audio reviews. This was the thing that, again, not to put ourselves out of business, but would be great to. I tested out with the Edge. What was the Edge Vision? So if you're on, and this is sad to say because I'm becoming ADHD with the internet now these days. If I'm on reading a Substack or something like that, it's really investigative reporting, but I also need to do something else really quickly. I had Copilot Vision launch that page into a podcast style review, basically. And what it does is it generates two voices that talk about what's on the page. And again, I'm not saying it's the best thing for you. You need to read, people. We all need to read so we understand context. We all understand syntax. We understand how words work and the importance of them. But if you are like me and you're becoming aging and maybe your time is split between 5 other different things all at once on your computer screen, this is a really good alternative, these note things. So you can try that out in either Copilot notebooks if you're paying for it, or if you have the latest version of Edge, you can try that out with the Edge Vision. Go to a long page, write up or whatever, Washington Post thing, investigative reporting. Ask the Vision to put it in a podcast form, and it does a great job. The last couple of things you get is Skills Agent, which matches employees to projects based on expertise. Again, this is what goes best with Monday. If you have people that are listed in your portfolio of collaborators that have specific titles to their name, Copilot Skills Agent will basically say, hey, your designer needs to work on these tasks, versus saying like, hey, my designer can also be my copy editor. It's like, no, that's not what their job is for. Now, if you're trying to save money, you might do that manually, but Copilot will at least try and put the best people in the best spots to kind of do what needs to be done for the team project. And again, obviously built on Copilot Search, so you get a few more advancements when it comes to organizing your text prompts, either introducing earlier or later responses within the initial search window. So what are your thoughts on all of these things for productivity, or at least from a productivity standpoint?
They're good things, but I bring up one. Are people overwhelmed with these productivity tools? I mean, we've got Google Gemini out there. We've got these Copilot features. We've got Microsoft Loop. We've got Microsoft OneNote. We've got Evernote is still hanging around out there. I saw a new one this week that I hadn't heard of called Obsidian. And all of these tools have got some kind of AI built into them. And I know what I use every day, but I almost feel like people are overwhelmed. Like, you've got Copilot Vision, you've got Copilot, you called out several different iterations of Copilot, let's call it that, or different substacks of Copilot. Are people overwhelmed and don't know when to use what? Or they've got so many choices that it's kind of like when cable TV first came out. You had 200 channels. So you wanted to watch a show, but you spent so much time going through those 200 channels that you watch nothing. You actually sit down and watch nothing. So that's kind of what I'm seeing, because it seems like, as you said, every 3 days, somebody's coming out with a new model. Somebody's coming out with a new version. Now you can do this. Now you can do that. And I just feel like I'm overwhelmed. on some level of, when would I use this? Why would I use this? Why not use this? Why not use that? And I spend more time figuring out what I want to use than actually doing what I want to do. So I end up not using AI at all and just doing it the old-fashioned way.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are in that same boat. I'd like to think that most employees are malleable. When given instructions, they adapt pretty quickly, especially if they're intelligent enough, obviously, to have the job that they're currently at. Uh, I think the overwhelming feelings that most people are, at least most people that might have, are from the IT people, the people who need to test this out, the managers who need to test this stuff out before they give it to their employees in general. Because at the level of executing this, it's like, hey, here's a new tool. This is how I expect you to use it. Execute. When that order is given to you, you basically saw the instructions and you just kind of rinse and repeat, and you figure it out, and it becomes second nature. Where it becomes overwhelming is for the person who has to say, all right, to your point, Monday already has a version of this in their own system.
Mm-hmm.
But will it save me money and time to integrate it also with the Microsoft 365 subscription we already have, and Microsoft's offering it itself? So now I have to test that both. And now, to your point, I'm wasting time. Instead of doing something, I'm testing something to help me do something else. You've added an extra layer, but it isn't for every employee. It's for the managers. It's for the IT guys, at least for the IT guys initially, to say, hey, I talked to the CEO or the CTO and or CFO, I guess, and he's saying, hey, it saves us money to use this thing now. And it'll save you time. Here's how to use it. But to that person, he's sitting at home going like, all right, geez, Copilot came up with another thing I got to test. I got to run it up against some system we've already been using for the last, 6 to 8 years. And I got to make sure that if and when we do make the switch, it makes sense and how many people are going to use it. And I mean, that part is spinning my head just thinking about all the intricacies of that. I get that. But at the end of the day, does it save you $5 a day, which then turns into, thousands of dollars at the end of the year? That's where Microsoft is basically trying to offer as many things that it can do it on its own to say, hey, use our stack. Stop using Mondays. We'll integrate with Monday. We're not going to be anti-competitive, but it will save you money at the end of the day. But this is all AI. You got to throw everything against the wall and hope something sticks right now, because we've been saying it for weeks. They're trying to figure out what is the key selling point for this technology that we've already gotten every investor to spend billions for. It'll be notebooks. It'll be AI podcasts. It'll be this. It'll be that. And then if one thing takes off, it's like, hey, see, we told you guys that thing. That's why you spent the money. So
it's just the one thing they're waiting for, folks. Just the one thing.
Spaghetti on the walls. All right, let's try and breeze through a couple more of these. We got the Xbox app. You want to talk about that?
Yep. Let me give you guys a quick rundown of what we've got going on with the Xbox app. The Xbox app finally got an update. It actually got that update last week. This was one of those stories that I held on to from last week, but very quickly, you can now buy games. Yes, you heard that right.
What?
Years later, you can buy games in the Xbox mobile app. You can get your Game Pass subscription in the Xbox mobile app. It would seem like that should have been there long ago. You can also jump right into your games on your MetaQuest, your PCs, your Amazon Fire TVs using the Xbox app. So now you can finally, guess what? Get into games. Imagine that.
Yeah.
All right.
Go ahead.
Let's see if we got anything else here. You can also remote play now, which I thought you could do anyway. I've not done that a whole lot, but you can now remote play in the Xbox app, and I kind of thought that would be part of the point to be able to.
I think there's a remote control, not remote play. Like you can control your Xbox from the app, like downloading games to it or turning it off and on. But I don't think you could like you couldn't stream from your actual console. I don't think that was the thing.
No, that's what got me, is why that wasn't already there. You're sitting in your house, you're sitting in your living room. You're on the couch. You don't want to go into the game room. Kind of brings up those handhelds. Anyway, you want to start that mobile app there on your phone and, get in a quick, I don't know. What are you going to play on your phone?
Sea
Call
of
of Duty on the phone, or what you got?
Sea of Thieves.
Yeah, Sea of Thieves. There you go. You know, it kind of bumfuddled me because I read this twice. And I'm like, what am I missing here? Because it felt like we're finally getting these features. Shouldn't we have had these features a long time ago? Just you've got Game Pass. Okay, I'll forgive you on the remote play. You added that. Thank you. But Game Pass, it's been there, what, 2, 3, 4 years of Game Pass? And I can just now pick up my phone and work with my subscription. I just, come on. I'm sorry, folks, but I had a hard time with that. I really did.
I mean,
Basic features of Game Pass and purchasing should have already been there.
totally agree. But I think we could also blame Apple and Google for some of the roadblocks, probably for some of the technology that just wasn't accessible at the time. But it's here now. So for those of you who want to go out and check your phones, update from your app stores in particular, go on to your browser as well and try it out. Next story we have is the DOJ enters remedies phase with Google. That is a story, like I said, we're picking up from, what is that, 5-6 months ago, where Google was found guilty of anti-competitive behavior, in particular with their search, if I'm not mistaken, and not the search tech, which is the current DOJ struggle that Google is in court about. But this is basically just their kind of deals that they made with certain parties, the way that they were, kind of trying to stay the default on browsers or whatnot. Anyway, 6 months later, they're not entering court to say, hey, Google, we, or as the Department of Justice in the US, we feel like you should no longer have access either to the Chrome browser, or you should share all your data that you've gathered over the last 15 years to become a monopoly with every other competing search rival. That way everyone's on the same playing field and we can go from there. Or you get a little more transparent in your advertising. These are some of the three things that I believe the Judge Leonie Brinkema was kind of looking over right now. Just make sure I get the dates right. It's August 24th, 2024 was the ruling that Meta determined Google was guilty of. Now that Judge Leonie is kind of going over these things, those are the top three that the DOJ is seeking remedies for. The court, Google countered the proposal by saying, hey, you guys are going too far. This would break the internet, basically, if we did any of these things. Here are some other things that we're proposing. And again, I think they're more akin to sharing data somewhat in a limited capacity over a period of time that they would be able to shut off. So it wouldn't be in perpetuity. It'd be like, hey, we'll give them the next 5 years. Everyone can feast on our data, and then after that, we're closing the gates. I don't know if they're going to go for that. Some of the other things that we're seeing in this remedies phase is we're getting expert testimony from competitors who are also offering up their own, ideas on what the Department of Justice could ask for. They're asking for competitors like DuckDuckGo and Microsoft Bing will be in the courtroom, which, hey, not a bad place for Microsoft to be at right now to say, hey, let us take over some of the browsing load or whatnot. What are your thoughts on these early days of this remedy seek? Do you think it'll even amount to anything? Will we feel the effects of whatever they come up with, or will this just be kind of another slap on the wrist and business goes on as usual?
I think something's going to be done here. It's going to take time, and anytime courtrooms and time always go together. Now, does it change before we feel some effects? Probably. Do the lawyers wiggle it out to where the effects are minimized? Probably.
That is their job.
Like you said, that is their job. But I do think we're eventually going to see the Google empire change. That's just the simple word I'm going to use.
And to your point, Microsoft had a pretty big shift which again, they lost out on mobile. They are still a $1 trillion company. So the idea of saying like, hey, we're going to see Google fall apart, no, they will have to pivot just like Microsoft did, but it will be significant enough where they might miss a big window of opportunity with something else.
Google is not going away. Google is here to stay. So nobody panic. You're not losing your Chrome browser. You're not losing your Gemini.
Google might lose it. Remember, one of the top things is divesting the Chrome browser, which I think OpenAI said, hey, we'll buy it.
And that's something I was going to segue to. Google may lose that browser, but you're not going to lose that browser. And some of the functionality in that browser may change if Google is forced to spin it off. But I think before we feel effects, I think when you first read this, it's like, oh man, Chrome is being spun off. This is a big deal. Maybe. That's what I feel about it. Maybe. I think the lawyers will massage it. Maybe we see a different administration in the United States by the time this works its way down the road and something's getting ready to happen. And they say, well, let's just sit on this to the next election and see if we can spin it back the other way. So, when you first read it, don't panic. Your browser's not going anywhere no time soon. Your Google services aren't going anywhere no time soon. And if they do change, Google will do exactly as you said. They'll pivot just as Microsoft did when they lost the mobile war.
All right. Putting a period on that, which I think couldn't have been said better. We're moving on to Doom. Not the feeling of Doom, but the game.
Not the feeling of Doom. And I'm gonna brush through this a little bit, but we've got a new Doom game coming out. It looks to be pretty cool. The Dark Ages, Doom, the Dark Ages. We have Microsoft is doing a big launch on this one. You can get a customized controller. If my buddy there's got a picture of that looks like a pretty gnarly controller with the blood spatter from battle all over your thumbstick there. You've got the green and red buttons. That's just a little different for Microsoft. This controller's got more detail. It's kind of loud. I kind of like it, and I'm not one for customized controllers. Let's see what else we got. We have a console wrap, which is interesting. So if you've got an Xbox Series X, I did not see one for the S. You can get this wrap to wrap your Xbox in. So if you get the console wrap and the controller, you will kind of be doomed out there. You can go ahead and start picking these up. You've got the wireless controller is an exclusive at the Microsoft Store. So make sure you pay attention to that. You've got that for $79.99. The wrap is going to be costly for some. It is $54.99. And then you've got the Elite Series 2 controller. I'm sorry, Microsoft, I've never been able to put $200 into a controller, but it is $199. All of those items, the controller comes out on the 25th. We're still waiting on the game in May, and the console wrap comes out when the game comes out. I believe the game is May the 13th.
I'm looking forward to this game. It looks like they've updated pretty well. This, you're in a medieval time, but with some gnarly looking weapons as well. I think there's dragons in this. So, adding your Doom characters with the dragon is always a plus for gameplay for me. Right, currently, I'm playing South of Midnight, but when I'm done, I'm looking forward to playing this. Moving on to our next one, we got some ThinkPad stuff we gotta go through real quick.
Yeah, let's run through some ThinkPad stuff. I cannot leave our good friends at Lenovo out of our podcast. They do a lot for us and our review units to keep these podcasts running, and I am scrolling, kind of buying a second here to scroll down.
Sure. I'll give us a brief introduction. We got the ThinkPad Ps and P series coming out. This 14 and 16 inch. Now these are their I don't. I forget what the P stands for. I know that the workstation laptops, though. So these aren't your.
Yeah, they are.
They're not your consumer ones. They're not even your C-suite ones. I call C-suite. That's the ThinkPad X1s, kind of carbon. Those ones are the C-suite. If you're an executive, you get that. For everybody else, you get the yogas probably, or some of these other versions of ThinkPads. But these P ones are usually made for research, graphic intensive work. If you're doing animations, things like that, these are the big honkers. And they'll be coming in, I believe, two variants with the AMD Ryzen AI Pro. And I believe you can get an Intel version of this, but I don't think it's out just yet. I think the
No,
rollout
that
has been AMD, right?
yeah, that was interesting. What we got to cover was from AMD. It had the Ryzen AI 9 HX Pro 370 that was up to 5.1 gigahertz at 12 cores. And what was interesting here, we had the MPU number for the neural processing unit for the AI. It was all the way up to 50 tops. Now, I don't know, what constitute a top or what 40
Well, I thought this
tops
one had
versus.
85, wasn't it?
Let's see. Maybe the second model down has 85. I'm sorry.
Yeah, 85.
Yep.
That's ridiculous.
So we're talking about one. I would love to pick one of these up and just see what it's capable of, because that's where we are. People are needing these Lenovo devices. Lenovo touted that these were some of the thinnest workstations that they have ever made. They're AMD powered. They're using, this was interesting. If you remember, the AI 370 chip is just to give you some correlation, is the same chip that is in the Asus Z13 gaming tablet. So what's interesting here, if you kind of read between the lines, you're not seeing a mention of an NVIDIA GPU here. You're seeing that we're using the GPU availability on the chip, and you can get these up to 128 gigs of RAM. And I'm going to kind of use an Apple term here. It's shared memory, meaning that if you have an AI based workload that can take advantage of your GPU, you have the ability to shift that memory to GPU memory versus system memory. And this is something I really want to try out, because I do run some local language models for AI locally. And I would love to be able to, can I shift 64 gigs of RAM while I'm running that language model and kind of let the system, play with 32 or whatever's left? That's going to be interesting to see how all that plays out. And with it being not a dedicated GPU, you are able to make them thinner. You're able to make them quieter. You're able to make them more portable. Like here, for example, up to 75% of the system memory can be dynamically designed to the GPU to boost your intensive GPU-based workloads. Good job, Lenovo. I'm gonna have to give Lenovo credit. This is kind of what I've been waiting to see. The workstation laptop, the workstation portable laptop that does not have that honking NVIDIA GPU out there that we have to keep cool, which adds space, fan noise, and kills your battery life. So
Yeah,
I'm
and
interested to see what these are going to be.
for those of you interested too, these graphic drivers are supposed to be ISV certified, so you won't have to worry
Yes.
about compatibility if you're worried about trusting everything to AMD. They should be available starting in next month, around $1,600 for some models. Again, if for those of you who've used a P version, P series ThinkPad, they come with Thunderbolt 4, USB-A, a full HDMI 2.1, so that's a faster HDMI transfer, and a smart card reader. So you get a full array of ports. You get the traditional ThinkPad design for the 16. You get the number pad as well. So these things, again, they're not going to be MacBook design level lookers, but they will apparently get the job done. We'll have to test out what all of this does as far as battery is concerned, because AMD is notorious for throttling when not plugged in. I know that these things are power stations and they probably will be plugged in for 90% of their life, but for the off chance that you do say, hey, let me try and do a quick bit of work on the train, on the plane, at an airport, whatever, will you only be doing a literal quick bit of work, 10, 15, 30 minutes, 2 hours, 4 hours? We'll have to see how that works out because they are still laptops and supposed to be laughable. The next thing we got was some early reviews for the ThinkPad Lenovo X1 Carbon Gen 13 Aura Edition. And I believe we got our hands on the ThinkPad X1 2-in-1. It's not a yoga, 2-in-1 Gen 10, which basically has the same configurations as the Gen 13 Aura Edition. It's a little heavier because it has to do the hinge thing or whatnot. But early reviews of the X1 Carbon Gen 13 Aura Edition have been raving. They love the improved graphics performance. The battery life has been great. I believe that the 2-in-1 that I currently am testing has an OLED screen, so the fidelity is great. It doesn't have the anti-reflective coating that the X1 Carbon does, and it also doesn't have the haptic trackpad that can be offered with some of these configurations. But if for those of you who have a quick second, go check out some of these reviews. If you're thinking about maybe, like I said, getting a C-suite level laptop, the X1 Carbon seems to be the thing for most people right now, and it's beating out some of the performances marked up by the Dell. I forget what they call the new XPS Plus version now, whatever that thing is.
It's the Pro. Remember they went Dell Pro, Dell Plus.
There you go.
And totally confused everybody.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing is, again, because it's an Intel one, you get none of the compatibility issues that you get with the Snapdragon. And you're also, if you're testing, if you're a Windows Insider, you can start testing out Recall, some of the other Snapdragon exclusive AI features that were, like the Windows Studio, stuff like that, on these Intel devices. So you basically going to get the best of both worlds without any of that return issues that we saw for the was it the Surface Laptop 7 for Amazon. That was kind of a story a few weeks ago where everyone's returning those because they got confused by Snapdragon versus Intel. You won't get any of that. We're gonna move on to the last bit of stories, and we're gonna kind of, like I said, go as quickly as you can through that. Intel and Google did their earnings reports over the last 2 days or so. And general gist is that they both did pretty well, considering. And you might be scratching your head saying Intel did well. I say considering. Intel is still hurting when it comes to restructuring and profitability and what their future holds. But they did manage to. Let me sure I get all the correct numbers for you guys. Get that down 1 second. Sorry.
Take it down.
Yeah, there we go. And I was down at the bottom of the page for me. Their Q1 2025 results, Intel reported revenue of $12.7 billion, surpassing analyst expectations of 12.3, and that was already brought down from previous projections. They had adjusted earnings per share were about 13 cents, exceeding the expectations of 0.012. They had a net loss, beating again their net loss, meaning they lost less money, which is, I guess, a net negative that turns into a positive. They lost about $800 million due to higher costs and write-downs. The guidance for Q2 was a bit disappointing, and it's only because it's on the heels of what seems to be a relatively decent earnings report this time around. But they're saying, hey, we're forecasting revenue between $11.2 billion and $12.4 billion, which is below Wall Street's expectations of $4.8 billion. I don't know why they're shooting this high for Intel, because again, they're still struggling to shutter a bunch of projects and programs that were expensive to try and do this refab thing and a bunch of other stuff. They're kind of shedding all of that and saying, all right, we're going to streamline and go here. There were some operational changes under the new CEO, who I believe was only been the CEO for less than a month or so. Lip-Bu Tan. Intel plans to cut operational and capital expenses, including significant job cuts, which is going to really suck. But usually whenever they cut jobs, investors, give the thumbs up with their stock purchases for some reason. They obviously will have some market challenges. Intel continues to face stiff competition in the AI chips section by obviously NVIDIA and AMD and TSMC. They talked about on the phone call some cultural overhauls, flattening leadership structure, cost cutting measures. Basically, Intel aims to reduce operating expense to 17 billion in 2025 and 16 billion in 2026. Obviously, lofty goals, but we'll see if they can do that alongside a $2 billion reduction in capital expenditures for this year. Currently, they implemented a return to office policy. They said will start, I believe, September 1st. Hybrid employees will be required to work on site 4 days a week to foster collaboration and faster decision making. I don't think the office culture was what was holding it back. I think it was development, to be honest with you, and basically direction, like where the company wanted to go with those engineers, because they have talented engineers. Speaking of which, they want to focus on engineering. Teams prioritize engineering by elevating core engineering functions and removing burdensome workflows. I don't know what that means. It sounds like a bunch of corporate speak. Divestitures and efficiencies. It's nothing Intel talked about. Moving over to Google. Google did well. They did very well. AI doesn't seem to be hindering them at all. Uh, they achieved a total revenue of uh, 90.23 billion, surpassing analyst expectations yet again. They are, I believe, saying that they should have a forecast, a net income forecasted reaching 34.5 billion, which was driven by pretty good growth in the advertising business despite these court battles that they're having. We'll see if any of these take effect, after the summer. Their advertising revenue was obviously still a mainstay of the business, bringing about 66.8 billion in revenue, marking an 8.5% year-over-year increase. YouTube advertising revenue uh, increased as well to 8.9 billion. Google Cloud grew by 28%. When you start very small, any kind of growth the numbers seem astronomical. We'll see if they reach their ceiling, like Microsoft starting to kind of reach theirs, or at least feels like. Growth did slow slightly from the previous quarter. AI and cloud investments, Alphabet, which is the parent company of Google, continues to invest heavily in AI and cloud infrastructures. They expect to spend about 75 billion this year. Yeah. Alphabet announced a $70 billion stock buyback program, though, in order to fuel this and increases dividends by 5%. So, again, we'll see what their next quarter's like, but they seem to be in relatively good shape, at least financially speaking. That is the end of earnings reports for now. We will have Microsoft coming up, Apple as well, stuff like that all next week. So stay tuned for that. We're going to get into some fun gaming stuff before we exit the podcast. I think you wrote up quickly about Xbox Free Play Days.
Yep, we got some free play days here. We have, let's see, we had NHL 25. Let me get scrolled down to our free play space. We had NHL 25. Let's see, where did it go? Has OneNote malfunctioned?
It could be, but it looks like, at least from the screenshot that I have, that we have
Yes,
Alien
I believe. Yep,
Okay.
OneNote has malfunctioned. So let's see, let me get back to your screenshot here, my friend. We had
Alien Isolation.
NHL 25, we had Alien Isolation, and we had Make Way. Make Way looked kind of interesting, where you were kind of going through a city, throwing things and doing various, throwing things at people to kind of make your way. So that was that's where the game title come from. That looked kind of interesting to me. Now, I would be more of an NHL 25 player. I don't have the pricing in front of me, but let me remind folks that when you get these free play days, go ahead and go into your subscription settings in your dashboard, and you can scroll down to free play days. You can pick these free titles up and you can try them out. I know this week the titles are roughly anywhere from 40 to 60% off during these free play days. So if you find something you like, jump on in there and pick that up. I'm going to try this. You're showing us Make Way here. I'm going to pick that up this weekend and just kind of see what I can do to make my way.
Pun intended, huh? Yeah, it looks like, just from the trailer alone, it looks like a kind of a roller coaster builder / racer that you can kind of do. And it looks really interesting. So imagine being able to
No
create
one.
your own tracks on Mario Kart and then racing those said tracks. That's what it seems
Yeah, I
like.
mean, we've got people falling off the track over there, and that seems like it's okay in this game from what I see there.
I mean, yeah, I think until you actually hit the very bottom of the ground, there's chances for you to fall off one track and land on a different track and keep going. But again, it seems like the emphasis of this is you're building these racetracks. Now, again, I don't know if you get to play against other people online who have built tracks themselves. So you can basically always have an infinite amount of unknown raceable tracks, which would be interesting. Or if you can just play, locally. Either way, it looks like, and you can put in obstacles, it looks like as well. So this seems like a really fun game to give a shot, especially if it's something free to play and you can add to your library. Seems like it'd be great for kids who are learning, Lego builders of some sort. If you have some builders in your family, and again, it's a weekend if you have nothing else to do and you want something fun and free to play that isn't, the AAA games that require heavy attention or you need super graphic intensive setups. Go ahead and give it a shot. Speaking of
My
which,
niece, my
yeah, go
niece
ahead.
is in the next room. I think I'll see if she wants to try this one out.
Sounds like a plan. And when she's done playing that, what will you be getting into? Because this is the section we want to save. We don't have a lot of time, but we'll get into it a little bit.
I'm going to be. I got my hands on my first handheld this week. It's a Lenovo Legion Go. It is the first generation, but I kind of wanted to get an idea of where we started before I moved to the next generation. And I am really thoroughly enjoying that experience. Got some issues with Windows behaving and, maybe not being as user friendly as maybe it should on a small screen like that, being the touch interface needs a little work, and maybe it needs to be a little easier to access your game. But as we talked about, the Xbox app is improving. For me, if I can get into Windows on that device, start the Xbox app, I'm good. The experience of being able to game on that device has just, you literally can pick it up. It boots very quick. That's something I noticed. There's not that time of waiting for it to boot. By the time you've pushed the button and got the controller in your hand, the Windows screen is waiting. I've got mine set up on a pin code. I punch in my pin code. I start the Xbox app, find what I want, and I play. So Microsoft needs to do some work, I think, to make things more user friendly. But to the point that we mentioned off camera, I think for the people buying these things, you kind of know what you're getting into when you buy it, because you've got to connect your Steam accounts if you want access to those games. You've got to connect your EA Play accounts if you want access to those games. So you kind of know how to operate a PC to start with. This just kind of gives you that extra medium, that extra access, that extra flexibility. And I was not a big handheld fan when these things first started being talked about before they even hit store shelves. I've got to eat my crow and say a gaming experience without a handheld is not what I want to think about, because I find myself before bed, pick it up, play a game, put it on a nightstand, or, like with my niece here, she's, playing around in the living room, doing her thing with Barbie dolls. I go jump on the couch and play a game, keep an eye on her, entertain her. We're good. I'm a fan of where this is going, and I know you picked up a review unit of the new Legion Go S, correct? That
That is
is the one. And you got the Windows version or the Steam version?
I got the Windows version. Just like I'm going through the similar things that you're experiencing as well. Now, we for those of you who were listening, we were watching a trailer for the Lenovo Legion Go, the original that came out last year, and a lot of the examples that they were showing were for people that were like in college. So we had a discussion about whether or not you give this to the younger crowd like you would a Nintendo Switch, because it isn't as straightforward as a Nintendo Switch. So we're to the marketing aspect, this is for people who at least know how a PC works. And when I say PC, I mean personal computer, not just a Windows PC, but at least knowing that, hey, there are complicated settings that you can and cannot get into. If you're working on Macs or Linux or whatever, you know that you'll need to navigate some of that stuff, that you need to update the system at certain intervals, maybe with Windows, maybe more often than you want to, obviously. But you know that you will need to update it. This isn't just like a set of switch where you just get it and go and it plays like it should play or played, 8, 9 years ago, exactly the same. This thing will be updated. It will get new features. It will get new stuff with it. Sometimes those updates will work out, and you'll need to figure out a way to you know use some critical support for that kind of stuff. As of right now, the Legion software that's on there does a pretty good job of trying to streamline and gather all of these things into one unified UI. We talked earlier about Xbox mobile app getting some updates and features. This is where we would like to see Microsoft kind of do a very similar thing. Like they've at least done compact mode for the Xbox app, which makes it more touch friendly and kind of narrows down some of the features. Now we just need to see them bring some settings options into the Xbox app so that you can control your frame rates, so you can control your audio, that you can control your fidelity, that you can control the pressure sensitivity for your triggers and things like that in the Xbox app, where it's very easy to identify, easy to change, and you'll never really need to go into Windows. That's where I think we'll see most of this going. For the most part, a lot of this hardware is pretty amazing. I think it's already there. This is becoming a software issue, and we discussed how quickly software can change and be updated and fixed over time, and give these pieces of hardware longevity. So I see a very vibrant market for this. Nintendo, has updated their device, and it looks very similar to, I believe, this Go S that I'm using currently. It's in black or whatever, but the S is in white. It's, they're going to meet at a certain point, and now it just comes down to, do you want a full library, stuff that you can play Steam with, or your EA account, or Activision, or your Riot account, or do you want a more cohesive experience with just Nintendo and from their Xbox partnership? So I am very positive. I am a proponent for these handhelds. Would I like to see better battery life? Yes. Would I like to see them a little bit thinner? Yes, but we'll get there.
Would I like to see them with an AMD AI 370 chip in them? Yes. But we have to remember, we kind of had a flashback this week. I sent you a picture of the Game Boy, the original Game Boy, in a news ad for $89.99. And these aren't $89.99, but that's where we started. And it seems like we have made a full circle. We started with Nintendo, then we went to Game Boy. Now we've gone to Xbox. Now we're going to handhelds. So we've kind of done the same thing. And I don't expect them to be perfect. I just hope we don't get to a point where they're not made, they're not wanted.
Oh,
because I think there's a place here. And I think somebody you can check out if you don't like Windows. Let's be fair. Steam Deck makes one.
Mm-hmm.
Steam Deck was first. I believe the Steam Deck was what started all this. They said, hey, we got this handheld device here. You can play your Steam games. And everybody went, wait a minute. Excuse me? You got what? You got what? And it was a good device. And still is. And everybody said, okay, Windows can do this too. So Microsoft has yet to show that they're tweaking Windows for handhelds overall. Now, they've done little things to the Xbox app to make it easier. They've adjusted the touch screens a little bit to make, the X is a little bigger in the corners, to where your touch space or your touchpad space is a little bigger, where you're only hitting the X and not the thing next to it. So Microsoft has helped out a little bit. I want to see Microsoft jump on board and say, yes, we're going to embrace the handheld. We're going to do it. We're going to make your games accessible. We're going to make it easier. And if they leave Windows in it, great. If they go to an Xbox style launcher, fantastic. If they give us a combination of both, that's okay too. I want to see Microsoft put their arms around it and say, Phil Spencer, we've listened. Play anything, anywhere. We've listened. We have the console. We have it on your phones. Now we're going to embrace the handheld. Now we know that we have heard that there's an Xbox handheld coming later this year. Is that where they surprise us and Windows finally gets on board a little bit? Could be.
Yeah, with that being said, where can people find you, hang out with you, talk with you about handhelds, or see you game this weekend?
David PAJ 1978. I will be out there on the Xbox World. I will put something up on Blue Sky. I will probably be doing most of my gaming tonight. Tomorrow, I've got something I want to do Sunday. At least during the day, I'll be back in the evening. But check me out on Blue Sky, David PAJ 1978, and I do stay with the mainstream titles, the Maddens, the college footballs. I'm gonna try this Make Way game out. I do pick up Call of Duty regularly, and I pick up the old Battlefield once in a while. So if you want to do some nostalgia gaming, jump over there with me. We'll try it out. Be glad to have you. And what are you doing this weekend? You gaming? You partying? You traveling? You getting kicked out in the garage, or what are you doing this weekend?
Probably all of the above, my friend. My daughter's got some birthdays to go to this weekend. But when I'm not doing that, I think I will be on my handheld actually playing South of Midnight. I just started it. It's pretty interesting. It's been fun to play. I've been playing that. I'll also be just probably reading. I read. I said earlier that I don't like to read long substacks, which is true. But I do love reading comics. I read those digitally. I got a bunch of stuff. I picked it from the comic store that I have yet to get into. So I'll be reading some X-Men titles, some DC stuff. I'm catching up on all the absolute lineups. Those of you who are comic fans, you want to talk about comics, you want to talk about gaming, you can find me at Happy Hulk at Blue Sky. That's basically where I'm at most days at all times. Every now and then I wander over to Threads and realize that I'm lost and get very scared. I run out of the alleyway. We want to thank you guys for joining us for another week. We hope you guys have a great weekend, and we hope to see you next week for more Microsoft news.
See you guys next week. Have fun.
Take care.
Keyboard clicks and data rise. Saxophone under flashing skies.